the beginning stages are the most difficult. It can take
So
um,
hard.
it can take a lot of meetings and sometimes many months. And so
Yes.
in that process, Suzi, from all of your experience, what are some life hacks, if you will, in getting those stakeholders aligned?
Mm,
Granted, the caveat is obviously you're in the community management position and you're not going to always be able to pull in alignment solely, but in your experience as you're coaching other community professionals, what are those pieces of advice that you'd like to share with them in
yeah.
helping to at least move that boulder a little bit?
Love this question. Well, I'll start by my caveat that every situation is different and every
Yeah.
company is incredibly unique. Generally speaking, if you have trouble, one of the first things to do is repeat what you've heard back to your stakeholder. Like, I've heard you say this. Is that still true?
Mhm.
Like, copy and paste a slide if you have to on something that they've created or that they've written as like your starting point for the conversation. And then
Yeah.
also gather your allies. Like, and by allies, I mean, if there are other people on other teams of the company who you believe could benefit from your community program or benefit from the strategic objective that you think might serve the company, rope them in, like get their perspectives, have them become advocates for what you're doing. And I'm speaking also, this is how things work at like a big corporation. I could see it working at a smaller company too, if you are not the only voice in the room saying this is a really good idea. Now sometimes you might be the only voice in the room and that's okay. um, but if you can get other people to back you up and be like, hey, I understand this vision, I understand what it is that we're trying to do here, I'm on board, here's how ways that I'm going to help bring this to life. So that way you're not the only person that's like, hey, we can do it this way. Show how it will serve other parts of the company too, if you can. For example, how would your strategic objective, how could you plus it up to also serve the marketing team? Maybe you can also give them collateral in this process for them to market. I'm just
Beautiful.
making stuff up right now.
Yeah.
Or how can the conversations you would potentially generate help the sales team inform and qualify their leads or something like that? So that way they're also saying, hey, this is going to help me reach my strategic objective as well.
Yeah.
So that way you're supporting all the elements of the company and not just like your own program. Now, this doesn't always work, but I often encourage my community managers to like look for ways to be of service
Yeah.
across your company. Look for ways to help other people make their lives and jobs and reporting easier and more effective. You will get more friends that way and more supporters, and people who start to really understand the power of community, not as a sales channel or as a marketing channel, but its own unique program.
Oh, beautifully said. And I think just the perfect way to, okay, now we're past this first milestone, if you will. You've moved the boulder out of the way, your stakeholders are aligned. Or do you feel ready to jump into the tactics, Suzi?
Sure, sure. So there's, all this being said, there are a lot of different ways to generate revenue from a community with all of these caveats in place. Like, it has to meet a strategic objective. What I'm trying to avoid here is me giving you a list of things and you just going and running with them, and saying like, but Suzi said this is a way to make money. Yes, and all of these other things that we needed to frame
Yeah,
it up. So please have the conversations that we all mentioned
it's
before you
essential.
start throwing things out there.
Mhm.
So one of the most obvious ways of generating revenue is through membership subscriptions or tiers or freemium models.
Mhm.
This is where I started um, my official community management career, was a paid and tiered community model. And so, examples of this are like Patreon is a great example. Like, you pay money to your, I don't know if everyone's heard of Patreon, but you like pay money to a creator and you get like exclusive access to their online community and their content. Digital Marketer was the startup that I worked at that I've been referencing this whole time. They do marketing training, like training in digital marketing, obviously, but they also give access to online communities as like a bonus of a paid subscription. There's also one of my favorites is the Slow AF Run Club,
Oh,
which is
very
all
us.
it's It's all, you can tell fitness is my passion. It's all tiered memberships. So, you buy in at $5 or 15, or I don't remember the pricing model. But that's, an easy, it's one of the most direct ways to get, I shouldn't use the word easy. So one of the most direct ways to show that you are impacting revenue for your company. For larger communities or like super niche specific communities, advertising and sponsorship opportunities can generate revenue. And by larger, I mean like it's the whole concept of like if you have a blog and lots of people are visiting your blog and clicking on advertisements, same concept. Or for niche, very, very niche communities, that could be one of the only places where advertisers can talk to that specific group of people gathered in one place. So if your community is super niche, that could be something to explore, reaching out to advertisers or companies that might want to speak to those people might be a way to generate some revenue. In that same vein, affiliate marketing can be really big. Having those affiliate marketing links that people can click on so you can get a little bit of that kickback. Octonation, I met them when I worked at Facebook/Meta, whichever one you want to call it now. And they are the world's largest octopus fan club. And it's a group that is now a nonprofit that has over 1 million people in it. I mean, it's huge. And they are really good at branded merchandise. So they'll work with their members and they'll create stickers and videos and stuffed animals and books, and they'll sell them to their community. So that's a way that they generate revenue for their nonprofit. A lot of career groups that I'm in charge for things like online courses and workshops to their members. I've also seen early access promos happening in communities. So that's, early access to products, white glove support, discounts to products, so that people are not only purchasing, but they are learning how to use it really well. And that will impact their long-term relationship with the company. And then event ticket sales is also a way to generate direct revenue. So Clarion is a company that hosts the Traffic and Conversion Summit, which is a huge annual conference for marketers. And they generate revenue sales through their online communities. And it's like $2,000 a ticket. It's crazy. So, that's a way that they generate income. Huge way they generate income. They nurture their community all year long, and then they put up the ticket sales, and then that's how they generate their revenue. There's also a lot of indirect revenue streams. So things like product recommendations made by the community. Sephora Beauty Insider is perfect at this. So they have forums where, women or men, people can talk to each other. And whenever they're recommending products like makeup or skincare or whatever, they can directly link to a purchase page from Sephora natively within that conversation, generating, product sales. Super, super cool feature. Another way is UGC content licensing. So we did this at Digital Marketer. I know some friends who have done this for their respective companies, but if somebody posts an amazing testimonial in your community, we will screenshot that, license that content, and we will run a Facebook ad featuring that beautiful testimonial at very little cost to the company. So, leveraging that UGC content for marketing purposes, for, we used it a lot for training purposes whenever we're creating training content, anything like that. It's cheap or free, cheaper and freer than trying to source that through, say, a creative marketing agency who will try to go out and do those things for you. Market research for offer refinement. So, if we wanted to test the positioning of a product or the positioning of an offer, we put it in our community first and get all that feedback. And then we could have something much more polished to put out, to the masses. And that would increase revenue over time because it's a better offer. Same thing with product testing, feedback for product alignment. We do this literally all the time at Meta and Facebook. Arranging roundtables and just having people talk directly to product teams and describing their use cases in their own words and things like that. Very powerful way to make sure that your product is meeting the right needs and the right use cases. And then also influencer and ambassador collaborations. So one of the programs that I had my hands on at Meta and Facebook was an advocacy program. And we would have people who have had success using the platform on stages and speaking at events and all sorts of things to tell their story about the success that they have had. So it's a way to like empower and project and the reach of those stories outside of traditional marketing channels. And all of those things impact revenue.
Yeah.
And often impact it more efficiently than traditional marketing and sales channels because it's your community talking to your community. And let me tell you, anything that someone else outside of your company has to say about your company is way more powerful than anything you have to say about it. So
1,000%.
it helps amplify the power of that word of mouth marketing.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a breath because I just
you tore through that list. And thank you so much for outlining that. And maybe we can condense that a little bit for the follow-up email for folks because I'm
sure.
Beautiful. And thank you so much for walking us through both the more common direct revenue streams and then also the indirect. And I think from what I was hearing, Suzi, is how really those go hand in hand. And as a community manager, it's best practice to be thinking about both the more direct and the indirect and how that you can use those two to strike that balance while you're building relationships.
Sure. And it's important to think through both. Some communities aren't great for direct. Like there's just not a good way to make it work, but you have all these indirect ways you can support people.
Exactly.
So it's good to have options and be able to approach things from different lenses and different angles. Especially as you're communicating with stakeholders and trying to find the right balance and trying to find the thing that will make everyone happy. There's just lots of different ways to think about monetization and revenue. And it's important to be able to speak to both sides of the coin.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess maybe the whole other coin, and when we're talking about monetization and revenue generation, is the relationship building element of that. And when you're building relationships while also striving towards generating revenue or monetizing your community, how have you found that balance either through your own career or in the community professionals that you coach?
Sure. Well, to touch on it, like I said before, community is designed to be emotional over transactional by nature. So the asks that you make of your community members have to make sense, and you have to always try to position it as giving more than taking. And one way to do that is to answer the question that people already have in their head, which is, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? How is this going to make me better, my career better, my family better, this community I'm a part of better? So don't just throw a sales conversation out there just because someone higher up told you to. You have to try to position it for your community in that tone, and if it's a bad idea, say so. Be like, I don't think this is going to resonate. Here's a different solution we could do. People in general, human beings, can smell a pitch from a mile away. No matter I don't care how great of a copywriter you are. Once that money is involved, like people are like, oh, okay, I get it. Like authenticity is what's going to save your life here. The thing that makes community so great is the thing that makes it so hard for revenue generation and sales. It's because it's built on emotion. Community members are much more resistant to traditional marketing and like commercial incentives. So, you always have to prioritize the long-term relationship over the short-term gains that it could make. So that's the risk that you take whenever you're doing direct sales in your community. So striking that balance is a little bit of trial and error, but also just being smart in how you talk to people. And if you can, be the gatekeeper on how things are proposed to your community members. Be the person in the room that says, the way this is worded is not going to resonate, or the way that we are positioning this is not good for the community. It's going to harm the long-term relationship that we have built. Like, equip yourself to have those conversations if you need to. I've had to have them before. When my bosses have been like, we need to increase sales and we need to put this offer into this community, and here's all the copy that we've lifted from the marketing. And, you're like, no, but try to make it fix it so that maybe we can. Or I have a different idea to maybe do a little bit of more indirect offer, or maybe if we position it this way, or maybe we do it at a different time because I've already made a bunch of asks. So give yourself the permission and the power to just at least voice your concerns when that happens. That moves you more into thinking like a strategist territory than just executing tactics. And I promise people will listen. Like, if you can frame it in a way that's like, hey, long term, this will make us more money if we do it this way. People are more likely to hear that conversation. Now, at the end of the day, you have to do what your boss tells you. I mean, like, let's be real. But, being the person in the room that's like the guard of that member experience. In my experience, people appreciate that. They appreciate someone saying, look, I know these people. I talk to them all day long. Here's a better way to do this. People are generally responsive to someone who positions themselves as the community expert in the room. So be that expert. Don't be afraid. Especially, my ladies on the call, like, speak up, use your voice. I know it's scary. Like, imposter syndrome is crazy. But I promise people will listen if you can tie it back and speak in terms of revenue or decreased cost. And like, hey, we're all about building relationships. Here's why this puts that in jeopardy. Here's a better way to do things. And people are gonna be receptive to that.
Absolutely. And I think in my community career, I found that as I've grown more confident with giving feedback to stakeholders, one way to kind of curb that feeling of imposter syndrome is kind of framing it in, here's what's good, here's the critique, and here's a solution. And really building out the compliment sandwich. I think it's commonly referred to that way. You can give yourself that distance, and as you are getting more comfortable with giving feedback like that, it will come more naturally too.
Absolutely. And if no one is telling you that you're doing a bad job, you're not doing a bad job.
Exactly.
Like, stop thinking that you're doing a bad job. Okay, sorry, just had to.
No, that's exactly it.
No one thinks you're bad at this.
Yes, and oftentimes we're our own harshest critics, I think, as community builders. Like, we are always thinking about the benefit of our members and how we could do something even better or even greater or even larger. And we put that pressure on ourselves, and oftentimes it's, very internalized, and then you're trying to balance all of this. So like Suzi said, if no one has said anything, keep on keeping on.
Hit me up for more mental health and self-care tips. I've got you. Okay. Let's get back to revenue.
Exactly. Okay, so Suzi, 5 more minutes, and I know we could talk about this for like 5 hours.
Oh my gosh, 5
but last question I think that we have is, how can we as community strategists evaluate the value of our community? And I think this is a really great way to wrap up in a bow everything you just shared with us. So what are your tips on how to actually evaluate the value, bringing together all the points that you just shared?
Know your ROI. Understand the revenue KPI that you are trying to influence from an organizational perspective, whether that is getting more customers, getting your current customers to buy, getting your current customers to buy more often, expanding to a new market, like whatever that overarching goal is. Understand what revenue you're trying to impact. If you don't know, figure it out. And then, create a strategic objective and a time frame and a KPI and check your results. The beautiful thing that I don't think people realize about, setting goals and things like that is that you can make that number up. You can literally make it up. You can say, I'm going to increase revenue by 75%. And here's how I'm going to do it. If you don't hit that goal, literally doesn't matter because you know what you have done, you know where you're trying to influence, and you know where to optimize for next time. So like if you need to make it up, literally make it up. It does not have to be perfect, especially if all your stakeholders are aligned with that. Like shoot a dart at a target. I forgot the word I was looking for. So make sure that all your stakeholders are aligned with what it is you're trying to do, and then just go for it. When I was first starting out, I thought that those goals and those numbers were like, I am going to be fired if I don't hit this goal, which is at a healthy company usually not the case. It is, keeping your stakeholders up to date on what's working and what's not. If you're going to hit it, great. If you're not going to hit it, explain why. And it's fine. That's just how teams work. I had no idea when I first started. I was like, I am in so much trouble because this KPI is so off. But you just picked the wrong target, and it's totally fine. If you can, try a holdout study. So this is whenever you survey members who are a part of your community and then a group of members who are not part of your community, and then you compare the results. So we did this at Meta. We did this, I think we did this at Digital Marketer. And we were able to say members who are part of this community were 10 times more likely to do X than members who weren't. And then we could tie that to revenue. So like if they were 10 times more likely to buy a product, then we could figure out the average price of a product and then map it. So, it's a great way to kind of show ROI, even if you don't have you can't integrate things with a CRM. So holdout studies can be really popular. Involve the community at every step that you possibly can. Give them ownership over their experience with revenue. As much as possible. Get feedback on pricing, positioning, product preferences, close the loops that you open. If you start a feedback conversation about something, come back and tell them the results of that conversation. And this can take a lot of different forms, surveys, polls, roundtables, customer advisory boards, really transparent updates about how projects are going, involve your community in the whole process if you can. Also understand your resource limitations. So, understand how much time you have to spend on community stuff, understand your budget, understand what support you have internally, how many things you can put in front of your community members before they get tired of hearing from you. Because if you understand all of that, you'll realize that resources that you're putting to one objective, you won't have enough to do a different thing. It's opportunity cost, right? So you really have to choose what it is that you want this community to do and try not to make it do everything at once, because you are going to run out of time and resources. And if you only post once a day in your community, you only have 5 messages to put in front of people. What are those messages actually going to be? Is it really going to be all monetization ask and revenue generation? Or are you like, I'm going to sacrifice one of my very valuable communication channels for this revenue post? So understanding all of that and allocating your resources and making sure your stakeholders know about that, because I think that there's assumptions that are made about how to communicate with community that you can get in front of. And then, like I said, always ask yourself, if you're communicating to your members, if you're answering that question, what's in it for me? What's in it for this community? How am I going to be better after I do this thing? If you can answer that question for them in your copy, in your content, you're going to see a lot more success than if you just say like, hey, everybody, here's this thing, go buy it. Which I've seen many greener community managers do, because they're just getting, messages from on high and directing them straight to the community as if they are a traditional marketing audience. So it's all of these things will help you strike that balance of authenticity and integrity within your community. And I'm speaking very generally on all of these broad points because, every situation is incredibly unique. But if I could provide like general guideposts, that would be about it. Is, involve them as much as you can, be careful with your positioning, understand all of your resources, and like really, really know that ROI and what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Oh, Suzi, thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise with us. And now that we've gone through monetization and revenue generation at this very high level with all the caveats, I think we can now pivot to Q&A. So let's see. I think we have 3 questions. And are you good if I just read out the questions to you?
Sure.
Okay, so Emily asks, I run a nonprofit and my board wants to try a membership program, but how do we determine what existing services we can put behind a paywall versus not when trying to keep the community free and open?
Yep, that is a hard question. I think that one of the best places to start would probably be talking to your members themselves.
Sure.
And hosting those interviews and really understanding your member personas and what they found valuable and what they would pay for, and run different scenarios by them, and get their opinion and their buy-in, honestly, so that way, whenever you scale up to paid, you have people who are already kind of really excited about the idea. That would be like my first blush advice, high level. Involve your community members and ask them. It sounds like you already have like an existing free element to this. And also look what other people are doing. Look for examples of similar communities who have done this type of thing. I always do that. And I reach out to those community managers. I find them on LinkedIn and I'm like, hey, tell me more about how you set this up. Tell me more about, questions that you ask your community. And people are very giving. I mean, community managers are one of the most supportive peers, like industry peers you will ever get ever. So, don't be shy to ask around on how similar communities have been set up. Not even necessarily nonprofit. You don't have to keep it to nonprofit, because this type of community exists in a lot of different sectors where they have like a freemium model and a paid model. So don't limit yourself to just nonprofit, but like look across the industry on how people have set this up. I've seen it to where there's like general education that is not gated. And the more gated stuff is, things like interviews with specific industry experts, or, you're increasing the level of access. Look up Harvard Business Review's Elements of Value. Amazing blog post from like, gosh, I don't remember, 2013. I literally reference it once a week at least. So look at the elements of value they've mapped out. The higher up the pyramid you go, the more likely you are able to charge for that type of content. So take a look at that to spark some ideas as well.
Oh, beautiful. And I will definitely be looking up that blog post as well.
Yes.
Oh, love Harvard Business Review. Okay, so another question that we have, is there a definite model for monetization?
No.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I know.
If
And
there was, we would be going through that right now.
And also we would all just be able to monetize more easily. But to Suzi's point, everything that we reviewed today are the puzzle pieces for your unique community puzzle, if you will. So as Suzi's been outlining, you have to be weighing what you're doing, and putting out those pieces and seeing what fits for your members and for your community and your stakeholders. And it's a lot of balance, but it's worthwhile because it doesn't, when you approach it this way, you're able to generate the model that's definite for your community. Anything to add to that, Suzi?
The only thing I was going to add is pay attention, close attention, because it's not always obvious on how other communities are monetizing. I'm thinking of a Facebook group off the top of my head, Austin Digital Jobs. It's a free Facebook group, and it is for people in Austin, Texas to find jobs in tech. And it's run by this woman, Lonnie, who has a blog called The American Genius. And every now and then she'll post her blog post. If she wrote a blog that was like specific to job seekers, they would go to her blog be exposed to all that wonderful advertising. And, you know, she would drive a little revenue that way. And then once a year, she will also do crowdfunding. So she'll like post in that group, like, hey, I run this group. My name's Lonnie. Hi, here's what I do. If you want to keep the lights on, can you like throw in $3 to this crowdsourcing thing? And then that's how, you know, she generates a little bit of revenue for that. So there, I mean, like, look at what other people are doing, especially over time. It's not always obvious. It shouldn't be that obvious in communities. It should feel like a very seamless part of the community experience. So pay attention, like join other communities, similar and different to yours, and really try to reverse engineer the content that you are seeing those community managers post. And that can really help, you know, get the creative juices going a little bit.
Such a brilliant advice. Okay. One of our last questions is, where do you get inspiration as you continue on this journey now? Any particular resources that you'd recommend that address these particular points that you've shared?
Please follow Evan Hamilton if you don't already.
Yes.
I think that he just launched a course or some sort of, you can tell how I just like skimmed this on LinkedIn and I was like, oh, that's cool. But I think he did some sort of course on community strategy and monetization, like within the last 2 weeks. He also has one of the best community newsletters on the planet, called Community Manager Breakfast. If you are not signed up for that, please do. Like literally one of the best things, like curated pieces of content. And, you know, just like I said, I join a lot of different types of communities and I just observe, and, you know, sign up for all their newsletters and, you know, just keeping track of conversations, follow community managers on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Literally, like if you see someone that has community manager in their like headline, just connect with them. I mean, I can list so many people who inspire me every day. Brian Alblinger, Max Pete, follow Morgan, follow me, follow like all the CMX folks. Like, get that and part of your like normal rhythm of how you consume content is like community stuff. And then also really take time, like being a community manager is in and of itself a creative outlet. You have to be creative in a lot of different ways, and creatives need a space to also have free time to like process and think. Schedule a 30-minute block of your day every day to just explore something. It can be reading a chapter of a professional book. It could be reading a chapter of a non-professional book. It could be taking a course. It could be watching a funny podcast. Like literally just consume different experiences that can like feed your creative bank, so that whenever you are asked to think on your feet, you know, you're like feeding that creative part of you. Because I know that community management, we talked a little bit about self-care earlier. Like community management, innately, you are taking care of other people at scale. And it can be really easy to get wrapped up in all of these tasks and forget to take care of yourself. So like be sure that you're taking time to like feed your soul a little bit. And like literally schedule it in your workday. Like, this is my creative space. This is my thinking space or my reading space or my how I like consume new content. Or, you know, I block out time 3 days a week. I'm consuming industry related content, and 2 days a week are like a podcast, a book, a free time. I keep a little doodle pad on my desk. Like, you know, save yourself some space to like be for a minute. And that will help you be able to think better on your feet whenever you need to. So it sounds weird. I promise it works.
Not at all. And it makes so much sense, Suzi. And I love how you're implementing it with your calendar, because I know personally, I always struggle with calendar maintenance and, you know, defending that time. And
if somebody books over it, be like, I'm sorry, this space is blocked.
Yes, exactly. And I love that so much. All right. So are there any other questions that we may have missed in the chat?
We have 4 more minutes. Sujin, is there anything else that we can address? Yes, Laura, feed your soul.
Hello. Well, I think that answered all of our questions. Since we have just a few minutes, I'm curious to ask a question. I know that we touched on there isn't one definite model for monetization. What's something that you typically see in a lot of communities where there could be room for improvement, or is there like something that's missing in a lot of communities in the current space?
You know, I love that you asked this question. The thing that immediately just popped into my brain that we didn't touch on is that if you have a community platform like a Facebook group that doesn't connect with a CRM directly, it can be really difficult to measure ROI. And that's how I started my career. Like, it was a Facebook group and we couldn't like upload every single person and like try to map them to whatever. So what I ended up doing was focusing on the narratives that happened within that Facebook group. So for instance, somebody made a post asking about, hey, I want to purchase this product. Has anybody else purchased it? And I intentionally did not answer it. And I let the community answer. And as the conversation was growing, other people were like, oh, now I'm going to buy that thing. And so I took a screenshot of that conversation and I sent it to my boss. And I said, I just made you $5,000 and I didn't even do anything. Like, I didn't even touch this post. And that wasn't like, I couldn't pull that from a CRM. I couldn't show him a nice chart of how much direct sales this community made, but I could show an example. And I could say, hey, if I can get 3 more people to ask about a product, I could make you this much money in general. And so, you know, it was focusing on the narrative and the storytelling piece rather than like, I can plug this community directly into our CRM and like do a bunch of fancy things and like show you a you know, progression of ROI year over year. That often usually can't happen with community. It's so hard to track, but if you keep your eyes open for those opportunities and provide that narrative to your stakeholders, you will start to see people pay more attention to the work that you do.
Definitely. It's really steering the attention of the community.
Yes.
Definitely. Well, this was a fantastic talk. Both Morgan and Suzi, thank you so, so much. I feel like this can apply to any and every community builder out there. And I'm taking away the fact that we're all strategists now, or we're all walking away as community strategists.
Yes.
So I just want to thank both of you and to everyone all around the world tuning in today to listen to this masterclass. It has been recorded and we're happy to share that after the event as well. But we're looking forward to having our next one, and we'll be sending out a post-event survey just to get some feedback from you. And as well, we'd love to hear about the topics that you're interested in hearing about for our future events. So thank you all once again. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.